This is the Lexus GX550 Overtrail Plus. It's only been out for 1 year so far, and for 2025, Lexus has already made a significant improvement. What is it? Well, we're going to get into it, and then we're going to put it to the test right here at our mountain test course. That's coming up right now on Driving Sports TV. This episode of Driving Sports TV is brought to you by Onyx Off-Road. Click the link below to save 20% off your new membership using the code DSTV. It was about this time last year in 2024 when we tested what was at that time the all-new GX550 Overtrail, and it did pretty good here at our mountain test course. However, because of clearance issues, we couldn't make it all the way up to the top of the Anaconda. So today we are back with the 2025 model. And it's kind of amazing, Lexus has actually upgraded this one over the 2024. Yeah, after 1 year on sale. So what did they do? They gave it a little bit more than 1 inch of extra ground clearance. And that is pretty significant, especially for a luxury, family-oriented SUV. This now sits with 9.84 inches of ground clearance. That also improves the approach angle from 26 degrees up to 28, and the departure angle is now 24 degrees. As many viewers know here at the channel, we do have a long-term 2024 Toyota Land Cruiser that we bought last year. And that one, even with less ground clearance, actually has a better approach angle. It's at 32 degrees. And of course, our Land Cruiser did make it all the way to the top of the Anaconda. So with extra ground clearance, will this GX finally make it to the top? Well, first we're going to go over all the details of this vehicle that they sent us for testing, and then we're going to put it to the test. Price as you see it here, with a heads-up display, premium sound, premium paint, traffic jam assist, rock rails, roof rack, and some other accessories. $87,760 US, including destination. For those who aren't terribly familiar with the GX550, let me just kind of give you a brief overview. The GX550 is based on the global Land Cruiser Prado, which is otherwise known as the 250 in its current iteration. It is the light-duty Toyota Land Cruiser. Here it has a 6-cylinder engine with a twin-turbo setup. The Land Cruiser in the US now, of course, has a 4-cylinder turbo hybrid setup. Totally different. Now, as far as this interior goes, it is kind of similar to the Prado 250, but it is different enough that you feel like you are legitimately in a Lexus. This isn't just a badge engineering job. They've done significant changes to this vehicle. We have a digital gauge cluster, but here it has Lexus graphics. Instead of a small kind of horizontal display, we get a large 14-inch display, although the actual usable space is pretty much equivalent to the horizontal display. That's in the Land Cruiser. And then down here, of course, we have very similar off-road equipment as to what you would also get in that Prado 250. We get drive modes, MTS, crawl, or DAC, which is hill descent control. And then we also have 4 high, 4 low, a center locking diff, because that torsion in the middle can lock. And then we also have a rear locking diff. Now, this doesn't have a front locker. To get that, you need to move up to the Lexus LX700H. That's the only Toyota/Lexus product in the US that has a front locker. Everything else relies on the Multi-Terrain Select, which is a brake locking system, brake vectoring. I mean, you can call it all sorts of different things, but the main point is that it'll add a brake to a wheel that's spinning, which means that power is not going to bleed out of the system, and it'll shift to the wheel with grip. When you combine that with a vehicle like this, that granted has independent suspension on the front, but it has EKDSS, so we get some good articulation up there. But this also has a solid axle in the back, which is really good for articulation. And all vehicles that are based on the global Prado 250 have excellent rear articulation because of that solid axle. And then, of course, you have coil springs in the back, no leaf springs, which is awesome. So setting up this vehicle, we are going to go into 4 low, and we're going to spend most of the day in 4 low because that is how you access all of the off-road tools. It switches the front camera to a trail view camera, which is awesome. And then also at this point, I can lock the center diff. Let's go ahead and do that. And then I could lock the rear diff, but I'm not going to do that yet because don't need to. We're actually going to start here mostly in Multi-Terrain Select, and we'll just keep it in auto. Which not only will adjust the brake vectoring system, but going into that mode also sets the adaptive variable suspension to be in the softest setting. which is appropriate for rugged conditions. Now, sitting an inch higher, you actually do feel it. Now, I do drive that Land Cruiser Prado 250 every single day almost, so I am very used to the way it feels. And this one definitely feels a little bit more teetery because I'm sitting an inch higher than normal. But that should really help this vehicle in the areas where it was kind of struggling before, mostly that approach angle. 26 degrees wasn't great, 28 is better. Getting up into the 30s, that would be ideal. You can get aftermarket bumpers though in the front. If you want to really kind of go off into your own thing, you can get an aftermarket front bumper, and then this would not only be one of the most luxurious off-road capable machines, it would also be one of the most capable. Any rubbing on the front? Nah, didn't expect it to rub there. But we are going to start here on the Rattler because I want to feel how this suspension feels. So I really think that the biggest advantage with extra ground clearance is snow, honestly, because once you start getting deep, compact snow, ground clearance is one of those things you just cannot replace. However, for off-roading, I am a little concerned that even with the extra ground clearance, the nose on this is still going to be problematic. Now, one thing that's not problematic is the suspension. This is a very, very rough road. That's why we call it the Rattler. And I feel like I'm just kind of gliding over it. It's actually quite nice from the driver's perspective. Very nice, actually. Right, so now we'll do the climb out. We'll do the hard line on the inside. I don't expect any issues here. Rear is not locked, so we're relying on MTS, multi-terrain select. Just gonna keep it slow and easy. Yes, no problem. Cool, well now let's move on to something a little bit more challenging, our Sidewinder course. I have to say, this is one of the most comfortable off-roaders I've been in. Not only is the suspension very smooth, these seats super comfortable, and as a one-up over the standard Overtrail and even the Land Cruiser, these ones have massage units. Though I do have to like dig into the menus crazy deep to turn them on. Let's turn that on there, yes. Okay, turning radius is of course excellent. No issues here. Onward. Now I can't hit objects too fast because then you get compression and that lowers the whole vehicle, so we need to be careful not to do, basically we're going to be tiptoeing over all the obstacles today. So it's not unusual when doing tests like this to be very concerned with scratching your vehicle, especially since this isn't mine, it's on loan from Lexus. However, this test is compounded by the fact that this vehicle, when they delivered it to us, had 100 miles on the odometer. 100 miles, straight from the dealer right to us. So I did call up Toyota. I got clearance to do this. So anybody else watching who takes out press cars, yeah, you got to ask first. They did say, no problem. Try not to scratch it though. I said, okay, I'll try my best. And to that point, are we going to rub here? Whew, no. I kind of feel like the old one rubbed there. I'm pretty sure it did, so 2 degrees can make the difference. So first we're going to try this with multi-terrain select and see how it does. We have 2 ditches here, which are definitely going to stress the articulation of the vehicle, both the front and the back. So look at how much swing we get on those 2 ends of the vehicle. And of course, this does have the EKDSS system, which will release the front and rear anti-stabilizer bars, which gives us even more articulation than we would normally get. So I just want to try to hang here so you can see how much articulation we have. And I add just a little throttle, that's like 1% throttle, and it instantly locks up those wheels that are spinning and moves us forward. Excellent. Now let's do it again with the rear locker on so you can see what the difference is, if anything. Okay, rear locker on. Takes a moment to roll in and have it activate. It'll probably activate while we're turning here. Still flashing. Okay, now it's locked in. Now that rear wheel isn't going to spin at all because the 2 wheels will stay locked together and move us forward. See, there we go. Now, why would we not want to have the rear locker on all the time? Well, it's because when you turn, the outside wheel actually goes a greater distance than the inside wheel, so you actually need a differential in the spinning of the two wheels. And when they're locked together, you'll end up with stuttering on the outside. So you don't want to do that all the time. So we'll just turn that off right now. We got over that little tabletop there, no scratching. This is excellent so far. Love it. Big improvement. And of course, I'm just going to keep that rear locker off for this climb right here because we have a very steep turn up at the top, and MTS will just do that turn better. For any traction issues, none. Easy. It's always steeper than it actually looks on camera, but this is doing an excellent job. Okay, we'll continue our climb out all the way to the top. Cool. Well, I think we're ready for the high-speed run. So for a fun run here, we're going to switch it into 4 high. Switch it there, neutral. Okay, we're good to go. I'm going to turn off the center locker because we don't really need that on, but I am going to keep it in multi-terrain select, and I am going to select sand. That'll give me the most amount of wheel spin. And I do want to point out that there are different MTS modes depending on if you're in 4 high or 4 low. It's a slightly different list, and they also respond differently because they are aware that you're going to be going faster or slower. Right. So this is going to be fun. Let's do it. Throttle. Now these are, of course, the adjustable variable suspension is only available on the Overtrail Plus, and it really does smooth out these roads very nicely. I feel like the throttle is very responsive with this 6-cylinder, and up we go. Really nice, very comfortable. I think that was one of the most comfortable runs that I had up there. Granted, I wasn't going quite as fast as I was with some other vehicles, but those harsh impacts were really smoothed over by these Tokicos. A+ work. Now continuing on with the ladder. The ladder here is a very, very steep climb. It is loose, it is rocky. However, this is the time of year where it's actually the easiest because it's dry and it is compact in places. Still, should be a challenge for this vehicle. It's definitely a challenge for crossovers. These vehicles, when equipped with all-terrain tires, they definitely have an easier time of it. Right, so what are we gonna do for setup? I think we're gonna go into 4 low, and I think we're gonna use crawl control here because this is a great place to test out the crawl control system. So once I'm in 4 low, the hill descent control button, DAC, turns into the crawl control button, and it will stack commands. So if I go MTS, I can pick what multi-terrain select mode I want, and I'm going to pick rock because I want the least amount of wheel spin. And I can go to crawl, and now crawl is engaged using the rock logic, which is awesome. Do you need all of this fine grain detail buttons and knobs? No. Legitimately, we probably could drive this in 4 high with enough momentum and it would be fine. But we're here to demonstrate features, so that's what I'm going to do. So if I recall correctly, this is about 26 to 28 degrees at its steepest spots. And we're just going to let crawl control do the work here. And I'm going to start the lowest setting because I want this vehicle to really work its way up and not rely on momentum. Super slow. Now at this point, the vehicle is managing both throttle and braking, and the braking is happening on individual wheels as necessary to keep grip on the tires that have it. Here we go. Now, of course, I can override any time. I can add more speed. We'll crank it up to 3 here. And then we have a little ditch coming up. So in the ditch, I'm going to put my brake on, put it back down to 1 on the crawl setting, and let's just see this thing crawl out from this position. Obviously, it has enough articulation to keep the wheels down, which is kind of the #1 thing that you need when doing roads like this. But it just keeps on moving on. Nice. Turn the speed up. A little bit like watching paint dry at this speed. And then the second leg actually is a little bit steeper, but it's also has a little bit better traction because it's not as rutted or as rocky. turn crawl all the way to the maximum. And there we go. Super steep. I can hear the brakes kicking in, brake vectoring system, and it does a great job. Okay, let's turn off crawl control. Now we're going to flip it around and go down the ladder using crawl control. Now we're going to go down. So again, using crawl control, this time we're using it for downhill. Going to keep it in low, and it's going to be really heavy on those brakes to keep us in the most controlled descent that it's possible. And yeah, we are well over 30 degrees there. Hear those systems kicking in? That's the brake boosters doing their work to keep us in control. Let's go ahead and turn this up a bit because it's not quite as steep here. I'm going to turn it back down again. Lowest setting. Maybe we'll do 2. Now the advantage of this system over something like a standard hill descent control that you get on a lot of crossovers is those require a little roll into them, which actually accelerates the vehicle a little bit, and then it grabs, which can actually cause slipping. It like legitimately causes a potential hazard. This one, because it's crawling, we can just crawl down into the descent and no acceleration is happening. So it's really nice. Obviously, this is very good for icy conditions, for muddy conditions, or for loose conditions like we have here. Although, frankly, when it comes to ice, you need studded tires. Otherwise, no system's going to save you if you're on an icy descent and you're straight on ice with zero grip. When I say ice, I mean kind of like patchy ice, not the full thing completely covered. Well, cool. There we go. And hit the button, and we are now out of crawl control. Okay, well, this has passed all the tests so far, so now it's time for the Anaconda. Can we make it all the way to the top? I'm guessing we probably can, not just because of the extra ground clearance, but because this one was equipped with rock sliders. The last one they sent me, it had side steps, and the problem with side steps is when you hit them, they actually hang down a little bit lower than the lowest ground clearance, and when you hit them, they just break. These ones are bolted to the frame, not the body, and they can basically handle the entire weight of the vehicle. You can even use them as high lift jack points if you need to on the trail, which is a cool feature. Okay, so we're going to be in, how are we going to set this up? We're going to be in 4 low. I'm going to use MTS rock mode still because I want the minimal amount of wheel spin. Now, normally in loose surfaces, you want to be able to spin the wheels to dig through it, but this has boulders. Let's not kick up boulders, shall we? So basically, I want the system to not get so excited that it's flinging boulders everywhere, because that's how you damage vehicles. So I am going to lock that rear diff, though, so that we don't have any issues there. Oop, forgot this one. I have to lock the center diff first, which kind of makes sense logically. You want that center diff. Okay, we're locked there. Now we're going to lock the rear, roll just a little bit. Should kick in. There we go. Okay, now I have my center and my rear locked. I'm in 4 low and I'm in rock mode MTS. Let's do it. I'm just going to try to march up as slow and controlled as possible. This is extremely steep, very rocky, very rutted. Can traction control do it for us? Traction control, it's working. I'm feeling it. I'm still making progress forward. Are we digging holes or are we going forward? We are going forward. We're still making progress. How is this possible? My foot is to the floor and the braking system is doing its job, climbing up, and oh my gosh, that is amazing. I mean, honestly, Toyota traction control systems, amazing. But we're not done yet. That was just the beginning. Continuing on up the hill, let's see if we're gonna rub here. Ooh, no rubbing, nice. Now this does have pretty extensive underbody protection, not just under the engine, but also under the transfer case, as well as over the fuel tank. It's a pretty nice setup, actually. Okay, here we are. This is the section that was the undoing of the 2024 model year. So what we have here is a very windy ridge, obviously. We got a deep ditch here, we have a side to side, we have another deep ditch, and then we go to the top on the steepest section. It's gonna be fun. Okay, so keeping the rear diff locked, because we have the side to side coming up. What we're looking for here is rubbing on the front. Actually, this is testing approach, breakover, and departure. Trucks always scrape on the back here. I don't expect this to scrape in the front. Okay, that's good. Is the hitch cover scraped? Of course it did. My landcruiser scraped there too. Now I'm gonna try to center on the ditches. If this doesn't work, we can kind of bypass them, but are we gonna hit that rock rail? Ooh, yeah, we are squarely on the rock rail, but I think we're gonna lift here, so. Ooh. Okay, we were dragging on the rock rail pretty solidly there, but that extra inch of ground clearance gave us what we needed to be able to move forward there and not get stuck. Okay, we're just gonna linger here. Yeah, I'm not feeling like both wheels are touching the ground. The back is, but the front isn't. So just gonna idle forward and it gets us out. No problem, plenty of power out of that 6-cylinder. So now we're gonna go into the hole here. I'm gonna try to align the front, scrape? No, I'm gonna put the front wheel on this rock here. And now we're just gonna climb up and out. Okay, great. Well, that did better than the 2024 model did, so I think we're ready to climb all the way to the top once we turn around in this very small space. Use the steep climb there, try to get our nose up. So continuing with the same settings, I have my rear diff locked, center torsion is locked, of course. And then I also have MTS rock mode on, which I like for climbing because it causes less chaos. Right on the rock there. Look at that articulation in the back. That is the benefit of a solid axle. Nice. Now on this ditch, I'm going to kind of hang a little bit off to the right because I don't want to scratch the vehicle on that tree on the inside or over glorified bush, whatever it is. So this is where you're really going to see that front traction system kicking in to move us forward slowly, steadily. Ooh, a little rub on the breakover, but we have that armor over the fuel tank, so no worries. I'm actually going to turn off my rear diff because I have a tight turn when I get to the top. And I've been cutting inside this line. I'm actually going to try outside. I've never done it, but I think it might be a little bit more challenging. Let's see. So go up, trying to keep grip. Oh, and we did it in the slowest, most controlled way possible. That was awesome. Well done. So the new GX550, does that inch of extra clearance make a significant difference? Yes, I think it did. With the standard ground clearance, I feel like it just wouldn't have made it up, especially without the rock sliders. Now you can do a lot more once you have rock sliders because you get a lot more confidence in going over some of those things where you're rubbing because you know you're not damaging the body of the vehicle. But man, this is an incredible vehicle. It really is. It's comfortable. It has massage seats, which is nice. There are just a few little things that I just kind of, I feel like they could do better. The massage seats, I know that's a silly thing to talk about in an off-road review, but the massage seats, the controls need to be on that bottom gutter next to where the seat heaters are. You don't bury it in the menus. It's too commonly accessed of a feature to hide it. And also you're spending too much money to hide it. And then also, I don't particularly love the ride of this on bumpy highways. On the freeway, it's fine. So now when driving on a highway with this extra ground clearance, I feel like it has a bit of a bobblehead feel to it. And I did have to drive my landcruiser after driving this because I was like, is it just in my head? And then I drove the Land Cruiser and I got back into this. And I'm like, no, it's not in my head. This thing definitely kind of bobbles more. Now, it's not the same suspension because, of course, it's the variable suspension, but that bobblehead feeling is reduced a little bit if you do mode select to sport because it stiffens up the suspension a little bit, but I don't love it. So I guess for off-road use, the extra ground clearance, awesome. For street, but for today, it did everything that we needed. We didn't rub the nose. We didn't really rub the back that much. Pretty much everything rubs on the back on this course. So that's the little tap we had, no big deal. So yeah, that's it. That's the GX550 Overtrail Plus. It's a lot of money, but you do get a lot of SUV. For Driving Sports TV, I'm Ryan Douthit. Thanks for watching. Be sure to like, subscribe, share videos. We make them for you. I hope you enjoy them, and I hope you enjoy these mountain test course videos. I love being able to take these vehicles back to back to back. And we have had many requests for an end of year kind of wrap up to cover in one video which vehicles did good and which ones did not so good. And we're definitely going to do that, I think. This fall, look for a video like that. In the meantime, we've got a lot more vehicles to test. So be sure to subscribe, hit the bell so you can see all of our videos, and we'll see you here next time.